Alright guys, this is the first video for the Fighting Nation, run by myself, Tarek Anderson, but of course a long time I will have some collabs and some other guys in with me doing their own thing, but at the moment it is going to be just myself doing the videos on mostly boxing, but I will throw some kind of mixed martial arts stuff in from time to time as well. Quite well knowledged in both, but I do feel that my boxing knowledge is that wee bit superior, so it'll be mostly boxing focused. Obviously a good weekend for it with Anthony Joshua versus Pulev tomorrow night. And also the first time fans have been allowed in the UK for boxing since pretty much the start of the pandemic, apart from obviously, you know, a certain amount of people that are allowed in through the actual boxing circle. So we'll go into a wee bit of discussion about the actual matchup, and I'll throw in some stuff about the heavyweight division. Not too much, I won't kind of bore you too much with opinions and top 10 and all these things. We'll get into post after this fight, we'll get into some more discussion about who we think's next for Joshua and the whole Fury AJ thing, which is obviously getting discussed all the time, regardless of who either one's fighting or whatever they're talking about. The AJ Fury fight's probably the biggest fight in boxing. But anyway, we've got Anthony Joshua versus Pulev tomorrow night. Literally just watched the weigh-ins before I started this video. Both very, very similar in weight. I think literally like a pound's difference between them. Joshua weighed in around the 240 mark and Pulev around the 239 mark. Both looking in really good condition. Pulev, quite surprised how lean and good condition he was in for being 39 years old. Joshua looking in really good shape as well. He's only 3 pounds heavier from the Reyes fight, which I was surprised. I was expecting him to be at least maybe 244, 245, but I think he's kind of still focused a lot on keeping his cardio, and I think he realises he's got a bit too muscular for long distance fights or fights when he's got in some sort of trouble, and his gas tank kind of comes and goes at times. And if you look at the Klitschko fight and also the Reyes fights, well, especially the first Reyes fight, he did sort of gas out, especially after he would maybe have a blast of an attack. After a minute or so of him putting everything into it, he was gassed sometimes for the next round or two. So I think he's brought his weight down by pretty much a good 10 pounds. Pretty much maybe even slightly more in terms of when he was at his peak before. So I think he's lost 10 to 13 pounds for good. I think he'll stay around about the 240 mark. I think for Joshua, he really needs a big performance here. Looking back from since the Klitschko fight, he's not really had like a big statement win, where he's dominated and knocked the guy out and done, fought the way he used to before the Klitschko fight and during the Klitschko fight. Yeah, he's obviously had 2 TKOs with Povetkin and Takam, but both of those fights, it wasn't the same. Takam was stopped in the feet, and Povetkin was KO'd really, but Povetkin also hurt him early on and won quite a lot of the early rounds. So Joshua has looked a wee bit vulnerable in the last sort of 5 fights. And he's played it safe in at least 2 of those fights as well. With the Reyes 2 and the Joseph Parker fight, he played very safe there, and stuck to a boxing game plan, which of course I do respect that. But the whole brand of Joshua is knockouts, like it was with Mike Tyson and many other guys. These guys are here to knock people out. That's what built Joshua up the way he was. He had all these, it was like 20 fights before he actually went the distance, and that was obviously the Joseph Parker fight. So, he has to, guys like Joshua and Canelo, love them or hate them, but these guys are brands. They're not just a boxer. These guys, the advertising and the money that goes into these guys is next level. And these guys have crazy purses compared to most 99.9% of other guys. So these guys need to really put on shows and either win dominantly or by knockout. Canelo's a bit different, obviously, because he's in the lower weight classes. A middleweight can get away with more points victories than somebody the likes of Joshua. When you see somebody Joshua's stature, size and physique, you expect knockouts. You don't expect him to go the distance. And the fact that obviously his first 19-20 fights were all knockout victories, you expect him to try and get back to that. But I don't know if he has got the same confidence since the Klitschko fight and the Reyes fight. I don't believe in glass chins or anything like that at heavyweight. Heavyweight's a whole different game. People talk about, glass chins and this guy goes down all the time. You can't call it a glass chin at heavyweight. These guys are 16, 17, 18 stone. hitting you with a 10-ounce glove. Anyone can go down at any time, we've seen with Povetkin and White. But looking at the matchup more, I think it's a really good matchup for Joshua to actually come back into the public eye as a knockout artist and kind of forget about the two Reyes fights. Pulev's decent. Kubrat Pulev is pretty good, but he's not what I think is needed to beat Joshua. He's approaching 40. He's only got a 50% knockout ratio, and he's been pretty inactive considering his ranking in the world. And the last guy he beat was Rydell Booker, who's now ranked, I believe, 114 in the world. So when you're fighting someone, even back then, if he's been inactive since then, Rydell Booker, but he was still maybe only 90th ranked in the world back when Pulev beat him. So even though he's a mandatory, it's not really 100% going to jump out as people as like a terrific matchup like it would be obviously Fury and Joshua, or Fury and Wilder, obviously after the first fight. So these kind of matchups, Joshua really needs to step on the gas, get his foot on the gas, and he really needs to get Pulev out of there. If it goes 12 rounds and Joshua, wins a decision, I don't think people are going to buy into the hype sort of train as much as they did earlier in his career. And obviously he's a world champion. I'm not saying it's all hype, but he has to get back on that platform of himself being the guy that's going to run the division. And a lot of the population, or casual or hardcore fans, already believe that Fury's the best guy in the world. And in terms of the resume, Fury has the better 2 wins in terms of 2 versus 2, but Joshua probably has a better body of work thus far. But we'll get into the Fury AJ thing another time. What I think will go down in this fight, with Pulev being an ideal height, running about the 6'4" mark, I think that will suit Joshua. Whereas Joshua, people might call me wrong on this, but I don't think he likes actually fighting the shorter guys. If you look at his past problems, even Takam gave him some issues. Povetkin, Reyes, these guys are all 6 feet to 6'2", shorter reach and shorter in stature. With everything else, obviously Reyes was heavier, but most of that was body fat. So I actually think that someone around about the 6'4" mark and up actually suit Joshua. I think he gets caught a lot with counter hooks coming down and also uppercuts through the middle when it's coming from a shorter guy. So I think the actual height and the stature of Pulev suits Joshua down to a T. I think there'll be some cagey early exchanges, even though I know Pulev was all in his face at the weigh-ins. But I do believe there'll be some kind of cagey early 2 or 3 rounds. Then I think Joshua will start to pick up the pace and probably get him out of there mid-rounds. Might not have all his own way. I think Pulev will win some rounds, maybe 1 or 2. But Joshua really, really needs a knockout victory here. And he really needs to put his stamp on that he's the man of the division. If it's like a lacklustre performance, especially the fact that this is the first time we've had fans in the UK since the kind of whole COVID pandemic. If he doesn't get him out of there he needs to get a knockout. It doesn't need to be a rush knockout, but I don't think a points victory does much for the reputation of Joshua. Like I say, he's a brand, and that brand was built from knockouts. It wasn't built from him scoring points, jabbing, holding, slipping, all these kind of things. You have to have boxing IQ and boxing skill, of course. I think some of his fights, it was just a wee bit stiff and robotic. I think it's hard to try and get the balance, but I do believe he will get the W this time, by knockout, and I do believe it will be quite a conclusive knockout, but I don't believe it will be too early. I may be wrong, but I'm thinking round 6 to 8. And then looking at it, Pulev is going to be at the very end of his career. So Pulev's may come out charging. I think that's probably the best option for both guys to try and get it done pretty early, because I don't know if Pulev's got it in him to go 12 rounds and take shots from a big guy like Joshua for 12 rounds. And I don't know if Joshua is really going to want to go 12 rounds again. I think he's got the stamina, especially now that he's really reduced his body weight for full time now. But I do believe that it will be a bit of a firefight once it gets going after 2 or 3 rounds. I think it will really go down and be a good fight for the fans. This fight is essential to the heavyweight game. People might kind of jump here, but no one's really fighting at the top 5 guys at the moment. Obviously, Dylan White was just knocked out off Povetkin, and that fight's probably not going to happen now until the middle of February, the rematch. We've got all the contract issues with Wilder and Fury, and Wilder saying, his water caused the defeat, and the costume and all this nonsense. So we don't really have any of the top 5 guys booked yet, apart from obviously Joshua. So we've got Joshua's fighting tomorrow. Fury doesn't have any fights. Wilder doesn't have any fights booked. White is probably going to be February, same with Povetkin, obviously. Chisora's just lost to Usyk. So we really need Joshua to put his stamp on the division and try and get the top of the division moving again. A lot of the kind of new guys in the division, they're moving and fighting a lot. Your Wadleys and Babic, all these kind of guys are really, really getting it going and it's been active. But the top guys, due to kind of the pandemic and obviously some of the issues with Wilder, haven't been as active. And I don't think it's good, no matter how good you are and how high up you are and all the coaching abilities. These guys not fighting for a year plus is not good. These guys really need to stay active. And I think that's when Joshua started to kind of have his cracks appear, when he stopped being as active. He was really active at the start of his career and it started coming down and down. So I think if he fights and beats Pulev tomorrow, he needs to be back in there, before the summer. And I think we'll get the Fury fight booked hopefully by January or February. Not for January or February, but it'll be booked by then, just depending on how the whole Wilder situation kind of plays out. But I think we'll get a good Anthony Joshua performance, maybe not vintage, but I think we'll get a good Anthony Joshua performance in a TKO kind of mid rounds, and then we'll hopefully over the kind of coming weeks we'll see the division sort of pan out like it should. But any kind of questions you've got, once the channel gets up and going, and I get more people on, I will take any comments, good or bad, and also you can add in what you want me to discuss and who, if you'd want MD brought on, and any sort of things you want me to bring up, whether it's rankings, divisions, anything, I'll discuss it, and I'll bring other people on to add in their own opinions. But I hope you enjoyed the fight tomorrow, and we'll get hopefully a resounding victory for Joshua, and get the division moving.